Donald Trump's use of the word or the expression "the chosen one" is really quite shocking. And it's an example of his grandiosity, revealing a lack of self awareness, a crude understanding of leadership and destiny and worth. And it's deeply bombastic. She wouldn't have been the chosen one. Among other things, it shows an understanding of other people as being commodities. In 2019, when discussing his trade war with China, he implied that he had been divinely ordained to correct global imbalances. It was a statement that at the time was met with ridicule and concern because many saw it as evidence that his inflated ego and his tendency to frame his actions in messianic terms is something he genuinely believes. And his phrase, "the chosen one," contrasts sharply with how that phrase is understood in religious or cultural terms. In Judaism, for example, the idea of being the chosen people comes with a weighty responsibility. The Jewish people are considered to have a covenant with God, one that demands the following of 613 commandments in the Torah. Rather than being a privilege or an exalted status, it's something that should be viewed as a profound duty. The phrase carries with it the idea that, in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, a concept that Trump, in his many small ways, fails absolutely to understand. And his this self-serving, condescending expression, when he talks, as he did the other day, about women, when he remarked that one of his accusers could not possibly have been with him because she would not have been the chosen one. It suggests an entitlement to choose based solely on his personal preferences or his personal appeal, reflecting the same kind of reductive thinking that he applies to broader concepts like leadership or destiny or buying a fridge. His condescension, his dismissal of his accusers based on their physical appearance shows the same level of superficiality and disdain for responsibility that colours his self-proclaimed messianic role in political or economic affairs. This is not somebody who should ever be handed the reins of power again. This isn't somebody who should not be anywhere near a nuclear button. I mean, it's just extraordinary that he is even given the time of day credibility. In contrast to Trump, you've got this Jewish understanding. I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but the Jewish understanding of being chosen reflects humility and accountability. The Jewish people are tasked with upholding a moral and ethical standard, which includes following laws that guide their behavior not only towards God, but also towards one another and towards people who are not chosen. Being chosen in this sense means being bound to principles of justice and community, not just personal or divine favour. Being bound to justice and community, not only for this temporal life, but beyond. In the more mystical ideas of Judaism, the idea of being chosen is deeply connected with a unique mission, with a cosmic and spiritual significance. The statement, "You've been chosen from among the nations," from the Jewish prayer book, the Siddur, reflects the idea, but it often raises the question, what is the task for which the Jewish people have been chosen? From the Chabad perspective, the chosenness is not merely a privilege, but a responsibility, one that elevates people to, which elevates the world. The passage in Exodus in 19:3-6 highlights that God's choice of the Jewish people was rooted in their mission to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. And this priesthood doesn't refer to ritual or ceremonial duties, as for example the Levi group, the Kohanim, perform, but the broader priestly function that includes being a special beacon to all humanity. And in that sense, every Jewish person is tasked with the role of drawing godliness into the world and inspiring holiness in the everyday. And the mission is both individual and communal. Is that Trump-like? No, it isn't. It's so far removed from what Trump... Every Jewish person, no matter where they find themselves, represents the entirety of the Jewish people and must embody holiness in order to influence the world around them. And that is something that surely is passed on through Christianity and through monarchy. For example, this is what King Charles is supposed to be. A life dedicated in Judaism to Torah, to mitzvot, so that the adherents, the Jewish people, become a light unto the nations, as Isaiah puts it. In Chabad, the emphasis is on, in Lubavitch teaching, the emphasis is on this light being spread through both the inner dedication and the outward influence, transforming the world through spiritual and moral conduct. In Kabbalistic thought, much more mystical, this chosenness takes on an even deeper, more cosmic meaning. Kabbalah speaks about the divine mission of humanity as a whole, with the Jewish people playing a crucial role in bringing the world closer to its ultimate spiritual fulfillment. The Jewish soul, seen as uniquely capable of perceiving and understanding the upper worlds, is tasked with bridging the gap between the physical and the spiritual realm. And the progression of Jewish spiritual development is viewed as a key to the advancement of all humanity. But that is our mission as human beings. The Jews have been offered the knowledge of divine forces to pass it on to the rest of the world. Everybody is given that torch to pass forward. And the idea, it doesn't place Jews above others in value, only in responsibility. And chosenness is viewed not as a privilege to dominate or to separate, but as an obligation to uplift the world in one specific form by performing the commandments, the mitzvot. In Kabbalah, all humanity is destined to reach that higher spiritual plane. But the Jewish people are tasked with leading the way by accessing and understanding the divine wisdom that will elevate the entire world, not just humanity, but everything that is created. In essence, the Jewish people are tasked with the responsibility of spiritual leadership, to model and convey divine values and wisdom to the rest of humanity. And so taking on a powerful office like that of the president is to assume the mantle, no matter what one's religious background, to assume the mantle of leadership, spiritual leadership, to convey divine values and wisdom to the rest of humanity. The progress of the Jewish people spiritually determines the progress of the world, which is why the disintegration of Israel under Netanyahu is so deplorable and shocking. And the delays of Jewish spirituality can hold back global development. Chosenness isn't an individual or nationalistic privilege, but a universal mission with far-reaching consequences, which is shared like some sort of infectious disease. The role of the Jewish person, both in Lubavitch, in Chabad, in that particular form of Hasidism, and in Kabbalism, that particular form of mysticism, is not merely to fulfill religious obligations, but to be an active force in bringing about spiritual unity, peace, enlightenment to the world. And this, according to Kabbalistic sources, is how the entire world will eventually come to recognize the sovereignty of God and the sovereignty of the good, to be a little bit Iris Murdoch about it. It's about humility and about accountability. And it's so far removed from the sort of bullying and bullish behavior of Donald Trump. Being chosen means to participate in justice and community, not just in personal or divine favor. Trump's language, on the other hand, is a stark contrast to a stark departure from all of this. He sees himself as chosen not to serve, but to be served by whoever he chooses. not to protect, but to benefit. And there are other examples in history where the idea of being chosen carries significant responsibility. In mythology, figures like King Arthur were chosen to lead, but only after proving their moral and ethical worth. And when that failed, King Arthur, if you remember, was he was selected to be king by pulling the sword from the stone, but then he had to give it back. It wasn't about power, but about his ability to lead with integrity and righteousness. Similarly, in Christianity, Jesus is referred to as the chosen one, but his mission is one of sacrifice and service, not self-aggrandizement. And Trump's attitude flips this narrative on its head, positioning himself not as a servant of the people or a leader with a duty to uphold moral laws, but as a ruler by virtue of his own supposed greatness, his flab. He expects others to conform to his vision of the world, and when they don't, he dismisses them, as he did his accusers. His remark, "She would not have been the chosen one," not only reveals his disdain for women as a whole, but also for those women who came forward. But it suggests that their value is measured only by his standards which are superficial, misogynistic, and devoid of moral complexity. Our world is not simple. Our world is complex. Our world is a world of shades of grey. And the simplicity of Trump is the simplicity of a child that is trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole. In essence, Trump's use of the chosen one reflects his transactional worldview. He applies it in much the same way that he talks about women, seeing them as objects of desire or disdain based on their immediate utility to him. His failure to grasp the moral weight of such a phrase highlights his incapacity for self-reflection and empathy. He is ghosting half of humanity. He sees it merely as a justification for his continued pursuit of power without responsibility, of power without accountability, of power with pleasure. This twisted interpretation is emblematic of his broader approach to leadership and why he should never be given that opportunity again, one that eschews the responsibilities of being chosen in favour of the privileges.